Hey media, we need a rewrite. I'm Erin Trafford, and this is The Fourth Draft. Hello! Welcome in. Wow, I'm so stinking happy you're here. I'm like literally pinching myself because it really did take me so long to get back on the mic after I ramped down my last podcast. It was one of those classic situations where it was like, oh yeah, I'll be able to jump back in next month. And a year later, here I am. Well, either way, I'm so happy you're here. I'm happy to be back on the mic. I'm happy to be in the podcast world again. Despite running two podcast companies, it was hard for me to jump back into my own thing, but we've been able to make time and space for me to do it. And here's the thing, I can't know for sure unless you tell me, which I am open to receiving that information if you want to share that with me on LinkedIn or email or however. But my sense is that you're here because either you know me in some way, maybe you were a listener of my former podcast, or you knew me from the radio or TV, or maybe you are a brand new connection that I have made since we've started up Story Studio Network. So I can't know for sure, but no matter what the situation is, I am so glad you're here and tuning in to this brand new podcast that I am solo producing, by the way. I used my team a little bit to help me get going with this, but this is all me. So if and when I make mistakes, because I will make mistakes and things will be imperfect, I hope you don't hold that against me. All right. So I thought we would just take a couple of minutes here to explain what it is that this show is going to be about and why the timing is right for me to step back into the ring. Because I did have a successful show. I ran Permission to Leap for 4 seasons. It did amazing things for my business back then. I made incredible connections, incredible interviews, really great topics. I still get people mentioning it today, despite the fact that it hasn't been in production for nearly a year. But I really wanted to paint a picture of my intentions for the fourth draft and why this might be something that you want to, commit to listening to on the regular. So first of all, there's a big elephant in the room. So let's just kind of eat him one bite at a time. As I record this in Canada, at least, the industry, the news and publishing industries are in, I think turmoil is probably the correct term. We have a government that pushed through 2 pieces of legislation, one of which has been extremely harmful and one of which has potential to be extremely harmful, so-called Bill C-18, which has been called the Online News Act, and Bill C-11, which is being called the Online Streaming Act. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about the nuances of those bills, except to say that when C-18 came into effect back in the summer, it almost, within about a month, had significant negative impact on a couple of things. Canadians' ability to access news and information in a timely manner and in an accurate manner, as well as media companies' ability to survive just survive, full stop, period. That's it. Just survive, pay the bills. So we have seen job losses. We've seen media companies shutter their doors. We have seen very little action, frankly, on the government's part to fix it or backpedal. And I tell you all of this within, the context of starting the fourth draft, because while C-18 doesn't directly impact my work, C-11 may impact what we do at Story Studio Network and at the Echo Podcast Network. And that remains to be seen. So I'm telling you this as a kind of a backgrounder. Like, this is the ethos right now. Everybody's kind of trying to figure out how to get their head back above water while at the same time innovating beyond the legislative restraints. And I get excited about that. I mean, they say excitement and fear are the same emotion. The difference between those two things is a choice. So I could be sitting here being terrified. Most days I'm choosing to sit here and be excited by the opportunity, but there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen. So this is that place, right? This podcast is where I want to have those conversations. The other reason I felt like this was the time to jump back in is that, frankly, there is a lot of interest and a lot of talk about podcasting and how it fits into the media mix writ large? How does it fit into the news business, into the news and media business? Because I hate to break it to you, but I've talked to a lot of folks who are in podcasting, and they're looking at news companies and news people saying they're screwing up the podcast industry. I've heard that more than once. I'm not saying I believe it personally, but I think there is a general misalignment with how I'm going to say the old school way of thinking is looking at podcasting, and the way podcasting is looking at the old school way of thinking. So we need a way to bridge that gap. And I'm hoping we can have some of those conversations here. But the other area of interest, frankly, for podcasting is in branding and marketing, because as we progress further into this digital world of interconnectedness, of constant connectedness, of me FM, right? Of everything being curated to the individual, we're starting to blur the lines between what is earned media, paid media, what is content marketing, and what is, frankly, journalism. Which, as someone who has a journalism degree, I find, again, fascinating. I don't think it's scary. I think it's something that we want to ask more questions about. How could this work? How does this work? And we've seen firsthand at Story Studio Network how podcasting is an incredibly powerful tool for brands if and when they're willing to step just slightly outside of their current understanding of what it means to market their brand. And so, to give you a little bit of background, because it seems like an appropriate time to do that, Story Studio Network is a podcast network specifically for brands and organizations. We produce podcasts that are designed to elevate, uplift, create swirl, understanding, awareness of a brand or a message. And we have so much fun doing it. And I can say this boldly and with conviction that we produce some of the best branded content in the country, period. And it's because of the team that I have assembled. The team I have assembled, I feel so blessed to have in my corner every single day. And because of a bunch of those factors, we're very bullish on the future of branded content, and specifically branded podcasting. And so I've created space actually in the next few episodes to really dive deep on how and why this works on the fourth draft. So I hope you come back at least for that episode and ask great questions about that. The other, I mentioned it just in passing, the Echo Community Podcast Network is fledgling. We launched it in September. We launched it in a town that is very near and dear to my heart, North Bay, Ontario. And it's because I started my career in North Bay. So, shout out to North Bay and all the people there. It's just a brilliant, beautiful place. And so the Echo Community Podcast Network is in the extremely early stages of growth and development. We barely even have a data set right now. But it is designed to be a grassroots approach to podcasting with a specific mission to reinvigorating local news markets. So it does work in tandem with SSN. But it is not SSN. It is not a branded content network. At some point, I envision that, all of the great work that we're doing at SSN will fuel some of the Echo Podcast Network, because there will be values crossover and alignment and really great content to share between the two branches. But right now they're separate, and Echo is a baby. It's an infant. It has just been birthed into the world. So I plan to take you along the ride as we grow that company and as we continue to ask questions. One thing I can tell you for sure that we've learned in the last month since launching it is that there are a lot more questions in the podcasting industry than I think we realize. And this comes from somebody who has been steeped in it for a very long time. I am still presented with questions every single day. So I invite the opportunity to dig into those questions. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. I definitely do not. But at least I can be that conversation starter. So, that was a huge reason why I wanted to start the fourth draft now. The final reason, there are many reasons, but the final reason that I feel the time is right for me to have this conversation with you is because, again, to be blunt and honest, I am getting a lot of questions about my personal shift. I want to say the word pivot, but I think that word is overused. So I'm going to say shift instead of pivot, meaning my shift from the newsroom into entrepreneurship and the success I had as a solo consultant, which I was quite successful. And I'm not saying I'll never go back to doing consulting again. I may if the right project comes up, but right now, not my focus. Because a couple years ago, I made another hard shift back into the media business where I've been able to take all of the work that I did as a executive content consultant and strategist and apply it to all of this deep lived experience that I have had in Canadian media. And that's where you saw Story Studio Network start to really take shape in late 2021 and certainly through 2022. So a lot of folks have a lot of questions like, what the hell is Erin doing and how is she doing it and why is she doing it? And to be honest, it's okay for you to be curious about the hows and the whys because sometimes I myself am curious about the hows and the whys. So this show is where I get to have those conversations with you and I get to kind of open up and share some of that because I didn't really have a place to do that before. And as far as episodes go, just format and cadence and all of those things, I mean, I plan to do some solo episodes. I am running 2 companies and I am recording these episodes very early in the morning before my workday begins. So you're going to see some solo episodes drop from me, hopefully every other week. But my hope is that those between weeks, those off weeks, I'm going to be able to punctuate those with an eavesdrop, which is where, we record all the stuff that we do. We record everything. We record all our team meetings. We often get into these really nuanced, frankly, super smart conversations, and I'm not always part of them. In fact, the team often says stuff that just blows my mind. And they have given me permission to cut some of that up and share that with you within context. So you're going to start hearing other voices that are not mine that may reinforce what I'm saying about what I see. They may be, conflict with what I say. But I think it's really cool that I'm going to be able to share the behind the scenes feelings, the behind the scenes energy with you. So my hope is that I'm going to be able to get into a rhythm where you're hearing from me, you're hearing from them, and you're hearing from some guests because I'm not alone here and neither are you, right? The fourth draft is, frankly, it's a pattern breaker. It's a pattern breaker for me, and I'm hoping it ends up being a pattern breaker in the industry. And I really cannot wait to hear from you and frankly, find out what this show can do. So if you are so inclined, please rate, review, share the show to your network. Because I know you know that that's how these things work. That's how this all works. And make sure you're checking out the show notes for ways to reach me, to reach SSN, to reach our team, to send your feedback, all those things. And if you'd like to know more, this is me. Hi, Erin Trafford, CEO at Story Studio Network and the co-founder of the Echo Community Podcast Network. And I'm rolling out the welcome mat. Officially, this is the fourth draft.